So it's August of 2019, and I find myself in a place I never expected. I'm sitting in a therapist's office with my wife next to me, and we've been married for 24 years. The last 10 of those have been pretty rough, and this is the full Hail Mary before divorce. The first question out of the therapist's mouth, "So, tell me about your childhood." Easy. I had a great childhood. We had housing, we had food, clothes. Okay, not fashionable clothes, but lots of hand-me-downs, but still. 6 kids in my family, 3 boys and then 3 girls. In that order, everything was in common. We shared toothbrushes, underwear, everything. What was mine was yours. We were so easygoing, so unselfish, so low maintenance, that as a teenager, I didn't even have an assigned bed. And because I knew I had such a good childhood, I was convinced our marriage problems clearly came from my wife's family, Michelle's family, obviously. Therapy, I assumed, would finally help her see how right I was. It turns out that fantasy can be a lot stronger than reality.
This is a podcast about what happens when old wounds meet adult love. We're talking about the patterns we didn't choose, the triggers we don't understand, and the moments where love feels harder than it should. We share missteps, the breakthroughs, and the deep inner work needed to stop surviving and start truly connecting. This isn't a story about perfect healing or flawless relationships. It's about awareness, compassion, and choosing growth again and again. It's about learning how to build safety, trust, and intimacy when those things weren't modeled for us. If you've ever wondered why relationships feel heavier than you expect, if you love but struggle to feel seen, safe, or understood, if you want healing, stay with us, because healing isn't out of reach. We're not here to save marriages or lower the divorce rate. This isn't therapy, it's education with a focus on harm reduction, personal agency, and making life a little easier. We do that through storytelling and sharing perspectives. These are our stories, filtered through our own lens. Anytime we talk about other people, that's just our perception, not capital T truth.
So the first time I saw Michelle, she had no clothes on. And that's because we had both just been born into this world at the same hospital on the same day, right around the same time. So unfortunately, I don't remember it, but that is the story, how it went down.
And it was funny because I didn't know hardly anybody growing up that had my birthday, and I always wanted to. So that was really meaningful to me to have somebody. Honestly, there was one girl that shared my birthday, and she was the one that everybody made fun of. And I have a little bit of shame that I was ashamed to share her birthday.
Aww.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And I wish I could say to her now, I see you.
Yes.
Yeah, born on the same day, the same hospital. Fast forward 17 years.
17 years.
And you're living in Japan.
Yeah, so I was living in Japan, and we were on an Air Force base over there. My dad was a civilian, but working for the Air Force, doing a quote tour of duty. How it works, it's volunteer. It's not like a forced. He's not active duty military, but that's just how it worked out. We were signed up for a 3-year tour. I think at this point we had been over there about 4 years, and we were Mormons, and so there's not a lot of Mormons on the Air Force base in Japan, or off base, of course. And so there were also missionaries. The LDS people, they send missionaries all over the world to try to spread the message and help other people find the gospel and improve their lives. And we would have these missionaries because they're from America, and when we're on the base over in Japan, it's like a little piece of America. And so it's really fun to share with the missionaries who don't often get a chance to see American food, or something that's resembles home a little bit.
Right.
It was really fun to have them over for dinner and share some time with them. And one missionary we had over there was Sister Stacy Butterfield, and She was great.
She was known as the blonde one, which she really just had strawberry hair, but over there she was the blonde one.
She was the blonde one. I remember one time we were in the chapel on the base. This is how I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the chapel on the base. She was about ready to leave, or I was about ready to leave, and we were talking somehow. She said, "Hey, you should maybe date my sister or something." Somehow we had this discussion. In my mind, I'm in the center aisle of the church pews, leaning down and talking to her while she's sitting down there,
Nice.
sitting in the pew, talking about it. So that's how I see that interaction. But
Yeah.
we somehow talked about how her sister, her younger sister, and I had the same birthday. And I think it was about March of 1992, and she was headed home soon. And I didn't know if I'd be heading home that year or the next year. It wasn't decided at that point. So I said, okay, yeah, it sounds good. Sure. And kind of let it go. And it turned out that I went home that summer. We'll talk more about that later. But I went home that summer and ended up going to school at Weber State University in a program that was called Early College, which was what we did. That was my senior year of high school, but I just went to early college instead because it's odd to come from a different school anyway. Yeah, one day I thought about the Sister Butterfield and said, hey, we need to call and check her out, her sister, see how it works. So I made the call, and through some discussion, somehow, I looked up the number. I looked up Butterfields that live in Kaysville in the phone book and started calling. And I think the first house, I got the right one. And we were talking on the phone. So that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So from my perspective, so my sister had gone on a mission to Japan. She was the fifth person in our family to go on a mission. She was the only one that had gone foreign. Everyone else had gone just around in the US and spoke English. And so it was a big deal for her to go to Japan. And she had just sent her best friend to Japan. So they both went to the same place. One was in it. They were different cities. And at the time in 1992, you didn't have the email, you didn't have, internet. And so you would write to each other, or my dad felt like it was so cool. So he would buy all the missionaries a mini tape set. And so we would tape record back and forth. And I remember listening to the tape and her talking about this person that you guys know how to date, at the time or something like that. And in my mind, I picked up, oh, there's another missionary there. It was like another missionary or something. I just had that in my head. And then I remember the day she came home from her mission and, she mentioned them. She's like, you should totally marry him. Just kidding. She actually encouraged me to do early college. It was time to sign up for senior year classes. And she didn't know you were doing it, but, and I was like, yeah, right. I don't want to go to college by myself. And then one day my close friends were like, hey, I think I'm going to go to college. And I was like, I'll go. And so the next day was the meeting and we signed up and I was going to the same thing as you. So we were just taking our senior year of high school and doing college instead. So we didn't go to the same school. We weren't even in the same district, but you had several districts funneling into this university for this early college. And there was a period of time between when school started for the high schoolers and school started for college. And so they had what was called an interim quarter. And so the classes were all just only people that were going to early college. And then we had one big class where we were all together. At some point, I knew I picked up that there was people from this Morgan High. And I knew that this person that had, that I was going to school with, or that my sister wanted me to date, was from Morgan. And the phone call that came in was so funny because my brother and his wife were building a home and living with us. I'm the youngest of 7. So I was the only one really at home. And so they had moved into our basement and hooked up their phone to our basement. And so you had called their house, basically. And I remember my sister-in-law coming in like, I think there's somebody on the phone for you. She just was like, can you talk to it? She's like, she's the in-law, I don't know what this is. And so I get on the phone and me and you have this conversation about, hey, how are you? Okay, cool. Nice knowing you at the end. I still am not 100% sure that you're not a missionary at that point in the phone call. But then I get it somewhere. I pick that up that no, we're born on the exact same day, like not just the same birthday, but the exact same day. And then we go to school, and I know that there's a group of people from Morgan. And at the time, we had this one class that was a type of communications class. So now we're with 15, 20 people, maybe at the most. And we would always come in kind of from the back and sit at the back of the class because we were cool, and you were always at the front of the class. And from the back of you, you had clothes that were kind of baggy, like a thug looking guy. You had like long bangs and all this stuff. And I remember thinking, what's this guy doing at college? And then I think you turned at one point. This is probably another day. You turned and talked to like the girl next to you, and I saw your profile and I went, hello. I was like, oh yeah. And I knew you were from Morgan. So I had a plan. And the plan was I was going to talk to this guy so that I could get to know this guy that my sister liked. I didn't care about the guy my sister was setting me up with, but I was going to use that guy actually to come and introduce myself to you.
Such a schemer.
But it was so funny because my sister was living somewhere else, so I didn't see her every day. And so I would see her like once a week, she'd come over for dinner on Sunday or something like that. And I'd be like, okay, what's that guy's name? She'd say Monty Wingle. And I'd be like, okay. And she'd come from Japan. So for whatever reason, it just sounded like one whole name or something like that. And that happened a few times, several times, until one day she was like, I don't know how she broke it up, but she was like, oh, his first name is Monty. Okay, that's all I need. That's all I can handle. So I remember driving up to school and telling my friends, that guy, now I finally know his name. And I had to give like a presentation in that smaller class. And we had to do a report on an ism, so capitalism, communism, whatever, those things. I picked materialism because there was Are You a Material Girl quiz in my Young Miss magazine. And so I copied off a piece and handed it out to everybody. And I remember the professor was just looking at me like, I so identify with Legally Blonde. I was so her at college. It was like just doing my own thing. And he got a kick out of me. But I did my presentation on materialism, and then we went and met for our final class of the week, once a week, where everybody would gather in one of those big lecture halls from all over. And as I still have the note somewhere where I'm writing my friend and saying, okay, that's the guy right there, 6 rows down or whatever, like we were on the front row and you were on the side, you were on the same row in the front. And I remember as I'm kind of anxious, okay, today's the day I'm going to go talk to him because I finally know Monty. And Monty's kind of not a common enough name in our generation that I don't think I didn't need to know the last name. What happens in the meantime is that the professor needs some papers passed out and hands them to you and says, can you pass these out? And it was chaos because there was close to 100 people maybe in that class, 50 to 100 people in that class. It was busy.
Yeah, this class was the one kind of in the stadium seating style classroom where all of the early college people were meeting together.
Yeah, so it was a big crowd, and I remember it was very loud, and it wasn't like a total serious class. It was more just a gathering. And so she's just sitting there and you're passing out the papers, and I remember it being kind of busy and stuff, and you were at the top of the classroom, and she was like, hey, something like, thank you so much, I appreciate you, what's your name? And you said Monty. And I went, oh. So on the note, I'm like, that's him. That's actually him. And I was so excited to get the class over. I know exactly what I was wearing. I was wearing almost these Daisy Duke shorts with this silk block colored long sleeve button up shirt, blousey type thing. And after it was over, I was like, hey, I think I know you, kind of a thing.
Yeah. And I think I had realized that day that it's the same thing, who you were. I didn't have a plan to talk to you yet because I was more just trying to survive.
Yeah.
But I do remember that encounter outside the lecture hall. And it was a little bit magical.
Yeah, it was. I remember kind of floating, getting in the car and just feeling like these goosebumps and so exciting. And then even, so that was probably I would think that was a Friday because we get together on a Friday. So Monday, I show up and we're back in that smaller classroom, going through that, like the longest class ever. And as we go walking out and you're like, hi, Michelle. And you said my name. And I just was like melted. I was gone. I think it was like that was the last week of those interim quarter. And then we started our regular college classes. So we didn't have any classes together. But you had a class with my friend. And so you would wait with her for a little bit. And then you had to change your schedule because you started Army ROTC. So you didn't have that class with her anymore. But I knew which class you had after me. So I would sometimes wait after your class, psychology, interestingly enough.
Psychology 101.
And, I'd just wait and we'd just say hi. And then I would go home. And that was it. And so that was probably September. And so we kind of did that back and forth. And then on our birthday, which is November 23rd, I decided I was going to ask you to go to my high school Christmas dance. And so I totally remember being at this little store, having my friend help me blow up the balloon. She was still going to the high school. So I'd gotten this balloon and it said, happy birthday to you. And then we wrote on it with a Sharpie, like to TOO. And then the card was like, I can't forget your birthday. It would be like forgetting my own or something like that.
That was perfect.
And then I wrote in there, hey, would you want to go to my Christmas dance with me? And we took the card and the balloon to early college office. And I said, can you take this he has this class with you. Can you take it to that class?
So I remember her saying, hey, come by the early college office because there's something for you there. She didn't take it to class, which is okay. She saved it. And I was like, what is that about? But I mean, it's a balloon and stuff. It's a little awkward to take her. No, I like that teacher.
Yeah, she saved it. She remembered.
But when I got it, I remember just being like, oh, wow, she might like me enough to go out with me. I had really no self-esteem. We had talked during that time about getting together. And for me, it was just something you say. It wasn't like you actually are going to do it. And then I was so excited when you asked me out because I felt seen and important, which I didn't really feel inside myself. And I want to add a little bit to the previous story. When we were in the small class in the intern quarter, one time after we had met, I think there was another week or two, and you offered to give me a ride to my next class, which was up the hill on campus to the gym class. And you had this standard transmission, 1988 gold colored Toyota Celica with the flip up lights, electronic flip up lights. It was cool. And you knew how to drive that thing really well. You were not cautious. You were confident and driven. It was amazing to me. And I was in awe at that. And you're so cute. So, I mean, talking about your dress, your outfit with the...
Do you remember that?
Block colors and Daisy Dukes. Yeah, you're cute.
Yeah, and when I drove you, you had a girl, like not a girlfriend, but a friend girl because your school would bus you almost down to the college.
Oh.
We had to take care of we had to find ourselves a ride.
Not a bus. It was a huge Chevrolet station wagon. It drove so smooth. So great.
Who drove it?
There was a driver. There was a bus driver. Yes. It was awesome.
So, you guys would all drive together. So then you had that class. So she came and we dropped her off as well. And I just remember, I mean, maybe it's looking back, but it was like this awkward thing. Cause I think she kind of wanted to be your girl and you're like, hey,
she was cute. She might've. I just do not trust myself enough to take hints.
I know, but I loved that about you.
I did.
Cause I'm telling you, Monty, you are for a 51-year-old major little hottie, but when you were 17, like you were a hottie for the time, especially.
Oh, thanks, honey.
Your smile is dazzling. And I know all the girls were like, you were like really, really good looking. And the fact that you had no clue about that was just even the more endearing, because you really didn't. You had no idea that you were very handsome. And just side note, when we had your star chart done, she said in there, she's like, you probably are very good looking. It said that. So it's like, it's not just opinion. It's like in the stars.
Damn. Youth is wasted on the young people.
Yeah. So we go to our first date, and you lived about a half hour away from me, but a whole canyon in between. And for whatever reason, I thought, we had decided that you'd probably need to stay overnight. We shouldn't take you home. It was going to be...
Yeah, it was like 30 miles.
We were like, you can just stay over. Don't worry. That's so far. I had convinced this group of 12 to 15 couples to go to this Japanese restaurant because I wanted to impress you. And so we went to this Japanese restaurant and we go to sit down, and the waitress comes and takes everybody, and they're like, I'll have the teriyaki chicken. Everyone had teriyaki chicken. And then you even got teriyaki chicken. And I was hoping you would get something kind of weird, but I didn't know what anything was. I had no idea what anything was. But I remember that was just so funny that everybody was like, a safe teriyaki chicken. Foreign restaurants were not as common as they are now back then. Anyway, so fun. So we get home, and I take you down to we have spare bedrooms because I'm the one at home. And we have a little kiss. And I'm shy. I have a moment of shy. So I'm like, okay, good night. And I run up the stairs, go into my room. And I'm even talking to my mom going, Mom, that was so embarrassing. I didn't even say good night. I'm like, I don't even think. I was just like, okay, bye. And I was out of there. And so the next morning we wake up, I had been bragging about, I'm a good cook. I had bragged and bragged.
Yeah, you had done 4-H.
That was part of my identity. I was a good cook. So I start making breakfast, and it's just, the eggs are just spilling out of it was a hot mess. I was a little nervous because it was so awkward from the night before. I felt so embarrassed about how awkward I had been that I was making this weird. But later on, you told me that those two things actually were significant for you.
Yeah, they were significant for me. I really liked them. The short kiss, it was enough. And you weren't like pushing for more. You were okay with yourself. I was okay with myself. It was great. And then on the eggs, you allowed yourself to be seen as flawed, and you laughed at it. You thought that's hilarious that I'm totally messing up these eggs. And you'd be like, I really am a good cook. I was like, sure.
I'm like, I swear I am.
I don't know what's happening here. That's what I was thinking.
Yes.
But okay, the eggs are good.
Yeah.
They were good.
Yeah, it was good.
It was totally sweet. I mean, I was loving it.
So I think that we had the date night on a Saturday night, and then so Sunday morning I'm making you breakfast, and then we go to church together with my sister, the missionary. We went with her. Then I took you home, and was like, and then the next day you got up and went to work, and you were working so hard. Your boss was like, did you eat Wheaties for breakfast or something? Because you're in such a good mood.
Yep.
And I did eat Wheaties for breakfast, but you kind of knew like that's not what it was.
Yep.
And you had a good weekend.
That's right. That was just marketing. But I did have a really good weekend. I was definitely on a high. That was so fun. So that was December 12th, 1992 was our first date. Then we saw Aladdin.
Yes.
Professed our love for each other.
Yes, you told me you loved me after that
We
movie.
saw it in the theaters.
Yeah.
And then in about March, I think, let's see, that was it. We dated for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, we got to talk about dating in April and when we almost broke up.
Okay. That can be its whole episode by itself. Okay, so I'm trying to get to a point where I can say things were not smooth sailing from here on out. Like you'd expect, because we were born on the same day.
Right. And it was a fairy tale at the beginning. It felt like a fairy tale.
So let's briefly talk about when I tried to break up with you, because I was feeling smothered in the relationship, maybe, or losing. What's the word? Enmeshed.
It's like while we were dating.
Yeah. So yeah, I felt like enmeshed because we would spend so much time together, and maybe I felt like I was losing myself because I'm a people pleaser, also really having a good time, and so the enmeshed, the fearful enmeshed part was coming up,
But you remember why?
I do remember why. So the night before, I touched your boobs, which was foreboding,
Over the clothes.
which was
Over the
so
clothes
bad.
even.
And I was like, first off, I felt like I'm going to corrupt this beautiful girl.
Aww.
And because I had had relationship issues in the past, and I'm not worthy of her was the other thing I felt. So I thought, instead of her getting hurt and breaking it off with me, I'll break it off first. So of course, the next night we have a double date. We're going out with friends. We're hanging out. We're down in Michelle's basement. I say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Come on over here. I want to break up with you. And this was before our date.
Yeah.
Before we were going out to have fun.
The other couple's upstairs waiting for us. And you're like, I need to talk to you.
And you said to me, no, we're not doing that.
I was like, no.
No.
No. I don't even remember if I said any. That's all I remember saying.
And I remember saying like, okay.
Yep. And then we go on the date. I'm so mad. And I didn't want to tell the other couple why I was kind of in a bad mood. Because, you're trying to be cool.
So I'm like dancing to try to keep everything smooth and
Yeah.
cool. And I think we're at the park flying kites, and I'm flying this kite looking back, and I run over this tree that has like a tent stake holding it, and I totally scrape up my belly really bad.
Yeah.
I'm bleeding out. It didn't like need stitches. It just scraped it really bad.
It left a scar.
It hurt, and I think you were kind of happy about that.
I don't know if I was immediately happy, but looking back, I can't deny that I was. That's right, boy. That's right.
Don't pull those games with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember feeling like another hit of like, oh, she really does like me. What? I didn't understand why. Yep.
Yeah, we dated. We were really close. I mean, your family, they would talk about, we got to come up with just a nickname to mesh our names together. And I would say ones like I liked. And they decided to name us Montel, which at the time there was a TV talk show host named Montel. And so it was just odd because we were together a lot. We would go on long rides listening to our portable CD player that you could plug into the tape deck of the car.
Yep.
And we would go on long rides and listen to those. We'd stay up late talking, and it was just fun to be around.
Eventually stay up late making out.
Yeah, that too, of course.
I like those nights.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember one time going on a ride, kind of have that twinkle in your eye, like we're going to go make out. So we get in the car, you get on the freeway, and I'm like, where are we going? We end up going like a 2-hour ride. I'm like jumping in my shorts, wanting you, and you're just like, la la la, listening to the music.
I definitely had a tension inside of me because I wanted to be the good boy. I didn't want to do the bad stuff. And
Gotcha.
another part of me wanted to do the bad stuff, to be rebellious. And that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I definitely had that tension going on.
And I mean, I appreciated it at the time. I was just in the moment, kind of a girl at that point, and my friends had been down those paths, so it wasn't this foreign, strange thing for me. And so I appreciated it, and maybe not in the moment, but later on, I'd be like, yeah, he was the one that he respected me so much. He didn't push or ask me to do anything that was inappropriate, as our family joke says. But I remember the next year I bought you a birthday present for our birthday, And I remember you were really emotional, and you let me know that that was the nicest thing anybody had ever bought you. I just kept thinking, that's just so sweet. I remember sitting in our living room and you're like, hey, can we go for a ride? And we went for a ride and you confessed all your sins, like all the things you'd done. And I was like, okay.
Oh, cringe.
Well, but I mean, I thought at the time I felt like he's opening up to me. That's like the chick flick moment of like, he's opening up to me.
Maybe there was some of that too.
I read it as closeness, and I think maybe you read it as, are you sure? If you knew this though, you might not like me, kind of a thing.
I don't think I could afford to like have you not know me and then find out about me and leave me.
Right.
I was getting too attached.
Mm-hmm. So then in April of 1994, you were in college now with a scholarship with the Air Force, and you needed to take a trip to San Antonio for that. And it was the first time we kind of really were apart for those 2 years. We were a lot together, and you came home and started to talk about, why don't we go look at rings? Why don't we think about getting married? We were 19.
You're 19.
And we got married in that September of 1994.
September 1st.
I loved being married to you. I loved being married to you. Although the first month of marriage, I think I threw up every day because I was so nervous that all of a sudden it was on me to make all the food, and I would just gross myself out thinking, what if I didn't cook the chicken all the way? And I would just make myself so sick. I felt so bad. You're probably like, what is happening with her? I mean, I did feel like feel the enormity of like, I'm married now. Like if I went home and decided, never mind, that would never be the same again. I couldn't introduce myself to somebody and just be a hot little chick. I was a married person. It was a big change for me. I took it very seriously, and it wasn't just, this is fun. It was serious. And coming to this relationship, I was just full on in. You were my priority. I didn't have the relationship with my parents to go home and be in that same relationship with my parents again. I knew that. So I was very committed to my relationship with you. And I had older siblings that I had seen their relationships. And so I remember the year after we were married, and we had built a home our first year of marriage, moved in August of 1995, and then had our first anniversary. And who knows, like, what were we thinking? I don't know. But I remember that first anniversary having this feeling of, that was not hard, but really feeling the milestone of having been married a year, just being like, wow, we made that. We didn't argue and fight. That wasn't the problem. But if we were building a house on one thing, like it just felt like, okay, right, we made this milestone.
It was also, I think I remember about once every 1 or 2 weeks, we would be talking late into the night. And not aloud, not fighting, but talking.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're connecting.
I'm just trying to get through it. I got to work tomorrow. What do I got to say just to get us through this moment? I'll lie, whatever. I don't know.
I feel like we're sharing and being vulnerable. I think probably looking back, you were probably like, oh no.
Yeah. And now I say I'd rather fight with you than love anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 years later, I think, started having our kids.
Yep.
And
it's smooth sailing from there.
That's right.
Until about 2008, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So we had about 15 years of always growing. First stage of life, if you ever read Richard Rohr, first stage of life is where we were at.
Yeah. We built 3 homes in that time. We
had 4 kids.
Yeah, 4 kids. We had a couple different boats. Mm-hmm. We had a trailer. We went on vacations, and we made good memories. And in 2006, we moved into our nice custom home. We had made it. In fact, we moved in, and I think for our anniversary or birthday, I had created a video of, pictures from our life up until then. And the soundtrack looks like we made it, because I thought, we've made it. Like, that's how it felt. We have made
The
it.
Shania Twain song.
Our family was complete. We now had this nice, we were, quote, rich now. We had this nice home. We had nice cars. Our resume as a couple was nice.
We were living the dream life.
We were living the dream life. Yeah.
Oh, and I had done scouting. I had done Boy Scouts at church. I'd been the scoutmaster.
Yeah.
You had been the Relief Society president.
Yep.
You had good callings. I think I even became the Elders Quorum president.
You became the Elders Quorum president. I became, at the same time, became a counselor in the Relief Society again. And just thinking, what do you do?
So yeah, externally we were good. We were validated as good people.
Right. I guess we have done the deeds. We must have arrived.
I can't imagine how great the future is going to be.
Right.
How smooth.
And how smooth. We've made it. There's just nowhere else to go. So that is the beginning, the intro, and where things took a drastic change.
It started because of the Elders Quorum president thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a story that you'll have to stay tuned for next time. And this has been fun to reminisce with you. The good times.
They were good times.
Really good times.